You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass Marnie Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Joanna Kleinman. How to stop holding yourself back. Welcome to another episode of Life Check Yourself. I'm here today with Joanna Kleinman. She's a renowned psychotherapist, a leadership coach, and CEO of Dethroning Your Inner Critic. I love that. She's also a best-selling author, and she empowers coaches, psychologists, and healers. She has this mind method, which we're going to talk about, and it elevates coaching practices and transforms people's lives by helping people get rid of that nasty little voice in your mind. She uses a whole variety of coaching methods. She has a spiritual bend to her process, which you know that I love. She also has a deep understanding of neuroscience and psychotherapy, and she mashes that all together so that you can build the life that you dream of, which is super exciting and why we're here. So welcome. I'm glad that the universe put us together.
Yay. I am too, Marnie. Thanks so much for having me.
So let's talk about the inner critic. So
yes.
Some people ask me, Joanna, how do I know if it's the inner critic or if, it's like the truth?
Yes.
Like, am I sabotaging or is it really that I shouldn't do that? Do you have like a way that our listeners can start to understand?
I do. So the way that I define your inner critic is a little different, okay? Because it's actually not just the voice of criticism and self-doubt, okay? It's actually the voice that speaks to you automatically, okay? So it's not just the voice that says, oh, you're not good enough and, you're never going to be who you think you could be, okay?
Okay.
On the other side of that, it's also the voice that says, oh my God, I'll use myself as an example, right? Oh my God, you sold, 1,000 copies of your book, right? You are, right? That means that, you are something, right? Because that's the flip side of, you are good enough if these circumstances are met, or if this person thinks this way of you, or you are viewed as this. Then the flip side is, well, you're not good enough when, because it's not if, right. It's when things don't go your way and you're not you haven't reached your goal and things, right? And you do fail, which particularly if you are somebody that's really fulfilling your vision, if you are continuing to step into the next version of yourself, you will fail. You will get judged. You will get criticized. You will get rejected. And it will not be a linear path. It will be all over the map. So that's kind of a long answer to your story.
No, it's such a good thing. I was thinking, someone was asking me recently about starting my business, and she was asking me about like, how did it start? How much money did you make? And all these kinds of questions. And I was like, well, here's the thing. I had my very first workshop ever in like 2009. It was a complete disaster. I did it with someone who didn't really want to be there. I had a really bad giveaway. I thought it was funny, but it offended people. And half people left during the break. And the reason why that's relevant is because I had that moment where I was embarrassed, ashamed. And I had a coach at the time who said to me, like, if you really want this bigger thing, are you willing to experience embarrassment, humiliation, shame, frustration? Like literally is like, like a contract with the devil, like if you want that bigger thing, like, are you willing to kind of get used to the fact that
Yes.
Your voice is going to say shit.
Yeah. A life of true greatness, right? Meaning you are reaching for the next version of you, the next version of your relationships, the next version of your sense of self, the next version of what's possible. Man, it is not for the faint of heart. It is a beautiful life, but it is, you've got to really come face to face with your deepest, darkest pain and fears and inadequacy. And I think especially women, okay, not that men don't have an inner critic, because they 100% do, but men, here's what's interesting. Men compare themselves to real people. Okay. Women compare themselves to this made up ideal version of us.
That makes sense.
That lives inside of our minds. And we think that she's real and possible. And so when we compare who we are now and what our life is now to that ideal version, we're never good enough. We're right. And then women will get on this sort of, this hamster wheel where we believe, well, I'm not there yet, but I'm getting to that ideal version of myself, and I'm getting to that ideal version of my life. And guess what? It doesn't come. And the reason being is because you will write the book and you will start the business and you will get every box checked that you thought was going to be the thing that was finally going to make you feel whole and complete and fulfilled and enough and fill in the blank, right? And you'll stand on the top of the mountain and you'll have it all and you'll say, is this it? Really?
Yeah, right. You're like, wait, there's another peak.
Yeah. Like, this doesn't feel the way that I thought it would feel. And that's, so just going back to what you had said, mostly, the voice that we hear all day is not us. It's not our true selves. We mistake it for our true selves. So how you can know that it's the inner critic as opposed to the truth is you can actually start to ask some questions of it. Like, is this really true? And if so, right, if I'm really not good enough or whatever it is, what evidence do I have? What evidence have I gathered to support that as the truth? And is there any evidence that if I really look, is the polar opposite of what I keep mistaking for the truth? And then to start to ask yourself, if I no longer believed that thought or that belief as true, what would be possible for me? And who would I be? And when you start to go there, what you start to feel in your body is an energy that feels expansive.
Right. So important.
Yeah. If you got energy in your body that feels restrictive or stuck, that's your inner critic self creating that, because your true authentic self, if you're really listening to your true authentic self, you will feel expansive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I was just thinking about how when I talk to people and they share the negative voice of the inner critic, there is a felt sense of like believing it, but also knowing that it's not true.
Yes.
Right. Yes. And I think paying attention to the nuance of it is a really important thing.
Yes.
Because that other little part that says, to me is like your essential self, your truth, your soul, that's going like, this is a sign, like alert, like fix it. Like, your garbage disposal is breaking down.
Right.
And so I think, so in that way, right, like you can look at your inner critic and see it as this window or this GPS or this direction of where you're experiencing a gap, right? In between who you are and you know, the truth of all of that. So let me ask you this. I think that in the fantasy you were talking about, we believe that if we did some certain magical thing or we were raised a certain magical way, we could silence the critic.
Right.
And I'm wondering, like, is that ever true? Because there's always some ego part of us, right, that is around. Yes. So how do we sort of make friends with it so that we're managing it, so that we're driving and putting it in the backseat with a movie and a cookie?
That's right. So I 100% agree with you that there is no such thing as silencing your inner critic, which is why I call the work that I do dethroning it. And when I say dethroning it, I mean removing her off the throne of your mind in this moment, right? So there are days, actually this one today that I'm talking to you, I've had to remove her from the throne of my mind. I'm going to say 50 times, right? And it's only 4:30.
Right, exactly. You're like, girl, I told you, turn my back for a second. There you are, holding your little scepter.
That's right. So, okay. So that is why I developed the mind method, right? I had been a psychotherapist in private practice for close to 20 years. And I, said, okay, this doesn't work just to get perspective on this particular problem, right? Because what you find when you really start leaning into that voice and using it as your teacher, right? What you start to see is that our inner critic is actually patterns of thoughts and beliefs that have been with us, the same regurgitated thought and belief, literally since we've been like 5 or 6 years old. So that we had an 8-year-old version of the same thing. We had an 18-year-old version. We had a 28-year-old version. We had a 38-year-old version. And it's just the same thought, the same emotion, just is landing on this particular part of your life now.
Right.
Right. So when you actually start to see it for what it is, okay, which is, it was created when we were very young, all of us, every single human, because it was a way to help us survive that first moment where we first felt something's wrong here in some way. I'm not okay. They're not okay. It's not okay. And listen, I had amazing parents, perfect parents. Hell no. Right. Amazing parents. Right. So it doesn't matter, right? People have varying degrees of this voice, but it has nothing to do with, well, I was raised in an abusive home versus this person was raised, with 2 parents that stayed together. It's got nothing to do with that. So if you can understand what your voice is, what is she saying? Who triggers her? Why is that triggering to you? And you really start to get a handle on not just how to recognize her, right, but how to recognize the warning signs of when she's, hijacked your mind.
Right.
And this is the end step, but we can get into the mind method, but the never ending message, that's the end step of the mind method, right?
Okay.
When you can recognize all of that, that's when you can unhook yourself from her in the moment that you're triggered and plug yourself into very different thoughts and beliefs that have you experiencing different emotions, that have you taking different actions and making different choices that over time are going to have your life go in a completely different direction.
This is a fascinating topic. So I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago. We were having this conversation about parents and young adulthood. And he was like, I had the best parents, like my parents, this isn't, and I was like, that's amazing. Like, that's great. Yeah. He's like, so I think that my problem isn't it's a strategy problem. It's a how problem, right? Like, I just need to know how to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And I said, well, first I said, can I make an observation? Because that's what I like to do. But I was like, I think that, I don't know about your parents, but if you're telling me that people said that you're kind of a control person, that you need to be in control, that you don't feel great when you're in control, that you're not sleeping because you feel like out of control, I was like, that didn't like magically delicious appear, like out of nowhere.
Right.
And I know I get that, because when I first did this work many years ago, I was like, I like my, I don't have any issues with they did great. They did the best. So I think there's this thing that people are like, well, if I have an inner critic and I want to dethrone her and I have to go back and look at my past, then that would make my parents wrong. My parents are old and they're this and they're that and they're great. And like, this isn't about them. This is just me, that I'm a controlling person. Right. So how would you answer that question? Like, how does control and the inner critic hang out?
Great. It's a great question. So I do actually believe that we don't need to go back and dissect our past and analyze our past. I don't even think that we need to know exactly when and why that inner critic was formed. Okay. But so if we talk about the I step of the mind method is investigating the indication signs. So with this particular individual, not sleeping, controlling, having, right, the same recurring issues in this person's relationship, right? Because he probably shows up similar ways. These are the indication signs. And so when you understand that control is fear, that's what control is. Anxiety is fear of that which you have no control over, right? So is self-doubt. All of the suffering that we feel,
right,
is because we are hardwired. I mean, biologically hardwired to try to control our life so that we can feel comfortable and safe,
right,
and to predict life. But as you know, life is very much unpredictable, right?
Right.
So this work is really about going against our DNA. So for somebody like that, I would start to have him look at, what are you afraid of? What does keep you up at night? Right? What is it that keeps getting in the way? And right. Again, I mean, it's hard to get into it in a few moments, but if he were to identify patterns, you know what? I had this, the same anxiety in college, when I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my life. And you know what? I had the same anxiety in high school when I was applying for college. And I had the same anxiety when I broke up with my, first girlfriend and I had no idea where life was going, right? So you start to see that it's the same thing that keeps showing up. And if it's the same thing, now you can start actually learning and this is where the spirituality comes in. If we look back at our life, we can actually really see that everything that we were afraid of, it did eventually get sorted out, right? You break up with that girlfriend, but that opened the door for you to, meet your current partner, right? Or, whatever. So everything that happens, even when it looks like, no, I don't want that to happen. Life is happening for us.
Yes, girl. Yes.
Right?
Yeah. It's crazy.
And that, that level of trust and surrender is a muscle. And by the way, I think it's the hardest muscle on the planet to develop. And I think you lose strengthen that muscle very quickly, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. 100%. I agree.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's funny. I was taking some clients through this life mapping process. And so I was doing, I like to do it. I like to do stuff that I teach my clients.
Yes.
And I was looking at this very thing. I was looking at like every decade of my life. And I was looking at these major turning points and what happened. And to your point, at every time, whether I was 10 or 13 or 17 or 27, in that moment, right, it feels like this is it, right? Like there is nothing that could happen for me from this. Like, and that inner critic, which I think is so powerful once you learn to dethrone her, like you're talking about, is that we don't understand. And if you're listening to this and you're like, Marnie, you don't even understand what's going on for me right now. Like we can't differentiate that is not who we really are. Right. And so I love that you're saying like, so do that, like, look at all the different things, all the different patterns, right? And look at how those things have like shaped your life so that you could grow. Because that's kind of what you're saying, right? It's taking you to the next version of yourself, even though it was hard.
Yes. And that automatic voice is the voice. It is the voice of fear. So it'll drag you back to the dead past and have you, dissecting and, if only I had done it this way, or if only this happened, right? It'll thrust you into this imagined future, right?
Right.
God, what if this happens? What if that happens? And our physical bodies, our nervous system, and our brains cannot decipher the difference between an imagined danger and an actual danger. And so we live in this overwhelm and frustration and fear, basically, right? Or doubt or concern about how our future is going to go. And what we don't remember is that right in the here and now, we're okay.
We're safe. I know. Somebody's like, is there a lion chasing you right now? I'm like, no lions.
Right. So if we and again, this is getting into the D step, which is design your life. So if you are able to make choices in the here and now from a place of like accessing a deeper wisdom that actually doesn't live in your mind, it lives in your heart, it lives in your gut, your intuitive knowing. If you can make choices from that place, life goes in a very different direction.
Yeah, because you're responding rather than like freaking out, right? Believing that little voice.
And not only that, this is where people have the hardest time, okay? There are things that want to leave our life. There are relationships that want to leave. There are careers that want to leave. There are habits that we have engaged in that want to leave. And we don't recognize that unconsciously we grip those for dear life because sometimes, even the habits of thought, how many times have I heard like, well, if I didn't have an inner critic, like that kind of propelled me to my success. Like what, right? Like I can't let go of that. And the truth is you can. You are just mistaken in thinking that I've gotta worry and I've got to kind of beat myself up and I've got to criticize myself and I've got to always be prepared for the shoe to drop. And that's the way, that you have a successful life. And it's actually the opposite of that. But most people don't know that.
Well, yeah, right. Like I used to believe the more, it was a math problem. So if I worried more, I'd get a better outcome, right? Yeah. So more worry equals better outcome, right?
Yes.
And I remember realizing like, oh, that literally has no impact on the outcome, especially pertaining to those things that are out of my individual control, right? So it is really that idea that the things that we think are keeping us safe, Joanna, are really the things that are making life feel harder.
100%.
Right. We're just like wearing boxing gloves going like, it's
Totally.
like.
And it's perpetuated in our culture too, right?
Yeah.
And social media makes it worse, and our unrealistic expectations of ourselves, of others, of life, right? It's all intertwined. It's like we're at this heightened epidemic of anxiety and anger and overwhelm, and so many people are disconnected and lonely and unhappy. And
It just made me want to give y'all a hug.
I know. It's like there's really something that's possible if we understand how to access a different level of consciousness.
Right.
Not only are we living different lives, see, this is the part that I love. There's a ripple effect. If we are our best selves and we're living the best version of ourselves, it ripples into our partners and our children and our, anybody whose lives we touch.
Yeah, that's so powerful. So let's talk about the role of self-compassion in all this, right? Mm-hmm. Because what you said, I think, is so true for so many people. They think that their inner critic is the driver and predictor of their success in a traditional sense, right? Yes, if I kick my own ass, or somebody else kicks my ass, or I tell myself that was stupid, or beat myself up, then that's going to kind of make sure that I do better next time, you know? And I feel like that's just not sustainable in any way. Right. So how do we stay motivated, make sure we don't just give up in an apathetic puddle on the floor? Yeah. Right. And how do we do that in a way that we actually feel the self-compassion, not just being like, oh yeah, because we silver line it, right? Like, I guess, there's always the next, I could get a promotion next time.
Right. Okay. Well, there's a couple of parts to this. Okay. The first part I will say is that this kind of work, right? Literally rewiring your mind to have different thoughts, different beliefs, different emotions that creates a different life.
Okay.
Is just like exercise, right? If you want to be in shape, you've got to make room and space every day, or 3 or 4 or 5 times a week, right? Yep. To do the work to be in shape. You can't just say, I want to be, I want to be in shape, and then do nothing and then be like, why aren't I in shape? Right.
I don't get it.
So a lot of what I teach people to do is actually to have time. And this could be like 10 minutes a day, but to make room for your inner critic, to actually allow her to spew all of her stuff, right? I have people do a brain dump where they get every single solitary thing that their inner critic is saying, out on paper. But it's not just getting it out on paper. It's then going back and then doing the work to start to poke some holes in the reality of it, right? And start to create some very different thoughts to plug into. So that's right. That's just one tiny little exercise. But the second thing that I found that's really fascinating, again, remember, I was I had my own practice as a psychotherapist. I would see people one at a time. And when I created the mind method, I created the Mastering Your Mind program in small groups of women, right? So the way that I lead it is 7 to 10 women at a time. And what happens there is that when you get women together that are committed to their growth and transformation, okay, what starts to happen is we all see ourselves in each other. So we start to see, oh, wait a minute, my voice is the same as your voice, right? And we're different, we've got totally different, stages of life, or, but the thing that unites all of us is that if you boiled all of us down, particularly women, we basically have like one of 5 different inner critics that's exactly the same. Right. So you really start to get a sense that, oh, this really isn't me. This is really a human phenomenon, right? And now you can bring some self-compassion because you just recognize this is my human machinery, right? It's like we're all dishwashers. We're all different, brands of dishwashers, right? And when you push start, the dishwasher does its thing. You don't have to have so much like upset about it and anger about it,
like disappointment, right? I see so many people that, have been on this journey for a while and they're like, I'm so pissed. I should know better and it's like, you're like, girl, Joanna says you just have to go in that little throne room and be like, honey, step on down.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can actually even bring some love to that inner critic self because your inner critic just thinks she's protecting you. That's why she's having you worry and why she's criticizing you. And she wants to keep you protected from, the pain that when you were 7 was so unbearably overwhelming that you felt like you were going to die. But you can handle it now. And right. We don't realize, wait a minute, here I have all these people in my life that love me, but I'm worried about what like Sally Smith is going to say about me. And I don't even care about her. Like what, why am I protecting myself from, this person that has no bearing in my life? And we can start to really take more risks and be more authentic and be more vulnerable and be more real. And when we do that, an amazing thing happens is that we actually start attracting to us.
Yes.
Right? Those people that we wanted to attract in the first place. And we thought we needed to do it by keeping ourselves small and protecting ourselves.
Absolutely. The thing is like, if you're going to want a bigger life, if you want more, then that voice is going to be constantly doing checks and balances.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we just welcome it. We go, oh, this is an opportunity for a breakthrough. We throw ourselves some self-compassion. We, tell our inner critic to get off the chair, and then our adult self can drive the bus.
That's right.
Or the Ferrari.
And exactly. And so the MIND method is MIND is an acronym. It's really it's a tool. So the M step, meet your inner critic, right? That's really leaning into it. What are you saying? Right? Like, why are you saying it? Right? Who's triggering you? Right? What triggers this? So the I step is investigate the indication signs. Those are the emotions, the body sensations, the behaviors, right? When you want to, down a half a bottle of wine or, send that nasty email off to, a colleague, right? That's your blinking red light that she's back. The N step, neutralize the never ending message. When you start to see, oh, wait a minute, I know this trigger. This has been here for my whole life. I could, this is not just about that my supervisor said X, this is the deeper thing that's getting triggered. And then the D step is design your life. So it's really using the M and the I and the N to, in the moment, unhook, plug yourself into a very different sense of who you are. It's actually your future self that's called.
Right. Your new identity.
Yeah. New identity with new thoughts, new beliefs, new emotions, new behaviors.
Woo! Yep.
That's it.
I love it. So all of this is laid out in your book, which is called, of course, Dethroning Your Inner Critic, the 4-step journey from self-doubt to self-empowerment.
Yes.
And we're going to have a link to that book on the show notes. And then you also have this inner critic assessment. What's that?
So that is a free assessment. It is a very detailed, comprehensive assessment.
Ooh.
You just go to innercritikassessment.com and it will show you. So I laid out 5 different kinds of inner critics. And what it will give you is a printout of which inner critics are most prevalent, how the percentage of time that they occupy your mind. And for some, you might have 100% guilty and 100% inadequate, right? It doesn't add up to 100 because sometimes, right? And then, also the possible reasons why that particular inner critic is there and how it impacts you, how it impacts others. So it's a really comprehensive report.
I love that because you can't dethrone if you don't discover what it is. I was just imagining, I just watched Inside Out 2 because I'm so late to the game. I was just imagining all your inner critics, they're like got their own panel. They're like,
I know. I gotta watch that movie again. It was
God. They're like fear, anxiety, come on over.
Right.
So yeah. And it's such a great movie because it really just does show how and I said this on another episode, but I was so moved by it. The character Joy is like, well, maybe grownups just don't feel joy as much. And I was like, no, Joy, we can.
Absolutely.
We just all have to work together. Joanna, thank you for coming. I so appreciate this and sharing your mind method. That was just so amazing. And I think it's such a powerful nuance to understanding the inner critic that it isn't just the negative. It's the like, oh, you got a promotion. Now you should get the next one. I think that's so powerful. Don't kid yourself, kids.
No.
Right? Like, never inner critic.
Yes.
You do.
That's right.
So the name of the show, Joanna, is called Life Check Yourself. And I think that so many of our listeners could rewind, re-listen, or make a note about a way that they could check themselves from what you said and use their breakdown to create a breakthrough. So do that. We're so grateful that you listen. Make sure you share this with a friend who's struggling, who might need to listen to Joanna's message. And you can find me on Instagram, _MarnieBatista_. Make sure you take the assessment, check out Joanna's book, and whatever you do, it's your responsibility. So life check yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now. Thanks for tuning into today's show. Do you ever wake up feeling like you've already run a marathon before the day even begins? Does your coffee need a coffee just to get through the morning? Well, I feel you, and I've been there. Burnout isn't just a buzzword. It's a reality for far too many of us, especially as we navigate life over 40. But here's the good news. You don't have to accept feeling perpetually drained as your new normal. I'm excited to introduce my new flagship, Live Life on Your Terms program. This isn't just another Band-Aid fix or a fluffy self-care promise. This is about real transformation. We're diving deep to tackle the root cause of your burnout, regulate your nervous system, lower your cortisol and adrenaline, and rewire your neural pathways to transform how you feel in your life from the inside out. Imagine this, waking up energized, not by caffeine, but by excitement and passion for the day ahead. Picture yourself managing stress with grace and finding joy in moments big and small. That's not just a dream or a someday. It's within your reach now. So, if you like what you've heard and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working together, here's what I want you to do next. Email me at vip@datingwithdignity.com. Don't wait for one day. Make today your day one so we can create your next chapter. I'm Marnie, and I'll talk to you soon.